and I are having
Welcome to Media Path. I am Louise Palanker.
And I'm Fritz Coleman.
Let's travel down the path marked Ruta Lee Lane. Ruta Lee has been delighting audiences since she starred in Hollywood high school plays and landed her first part guest starring on The Roy Rogers Show and then the George Burns and Gracie Allen Show. Ruta's one-woman show is called Consider Your Ass Kissed, and she is right here with us today. We're also going to talk with Rick Mitchell, who has written a very useful book. You may need it with wedding season approaching. It's called How to Write a Funny Speech. First, Fritz, where has your media path taken you this week?
All right, well, I'm going to talk about the Nickel Boys. This is on Amazon Prime now, finally streaming. It's based on a book by Colson Whitehead, a writer I really admire. He wrote Underground Railroad, which was turned into an acclaimed series on Netflix, and he wrote another fabulous book called Harlem Shuffle. Nickel Boys was nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. It kind of appeared out of nowhere. It didn't have a lot of juice before that. The story is based on Elwood Curtis, a young African-American boy in Tallahassee, Florida, who's been accepted at an HBCU. He's hitchhiking from his home in Tallahassee to the school and is picked up by a guy driving a stolen car. They get stopped by the police, and Elwood is falsely arrested and accused for being an accomplice. He's sent to a dark and brutal reform school called Nickel Academy. Nickel is both white and black youthful inmates. The white inmates are treated much better than the blacks. They're handled more humanely. They eat better. They have better accommodations. The blacks are housed in shabby surroundings, and the school doesn't really attempt to educate them. They're just warehousing them until their time is up. Time goes along, the brutality of the place is finally exposed, including the discovery of dozens of bodies of black youth buried on the Nickel property. This is based on a true story of the Dozier School for Boys, closed now, but notorious for its brutal treatment of the inmates. Coincidentally, there's a documentary out now called Sugarcane. Did you see this?
Not yet.
It's unbelievable. It's about an Indian school in Canada, which tries to program Native children to lose their Indian identity and identify more with Christian white culture. And just like Nickel Boys, the bodies of abused and buried students are found on the property. The acting in Nickel Boys is phenomenal, as is its cinematography. It's shot in first-person POV, first-person point of view, which really puts you in the terrified mindset of these young men. It's Nickel Boys on Amazon Prime. I loved it.
Okay, I will check that out. Thank you for its great recommendation. Today I'm investigating a new film genre that we'll call reality winner noir. Within this genre, you'll find at least 2 documentaries on NSA document leaker Reality Winner. Then came the scripted series. In 2023, a film came out called Reality. In 2024, we have a new film called Winner. Now, because Reality Winner is a person and has such an unusual name, both film titles take you off the trail of what they are actually about, as much as her name distracted us from who she is, what she did, why she did it, and how severely she was punished. Reality Winner was the NSA employee who leaked classified documents about Russian interference in our 2016 election to the media. Her intentions were noble. She was harshly penalized. The first film, Reality, is culled from actual transcripts between Reality and the FBI agents who descended upon her home and interrogated her for hours. It's chilling. She is taken directly into custody, granted no bail, and given a 6-year sentence. The second film, Winner, offers a more three-dimensional picture of a highly intelligent, idealistic, spirited woman from an eccentric family with a unique gift for languages who mastered Arabic and Pashto in high school and longed to travel to far-flung lands and work as a translator. An Air Force recruiter promised her that opportunity. Instead, they put her Pashto to work on the task of monitoring conversations and alerting the drone strike team when she heard something suspicious. However many unknown lives she may have saved, Reality was stricken by those her work was destroying, causing her OCD, ADHD wiring to spin her into exhausting superstition spirals. If I do 1,000 pull-ups, the child I was listening to today won't die. Reality Winner's story is one example of the Trump government's intention to hide their dark and dangerous truth behind the front of upholding national security. Reality Winner, who tried to warn us, gets 5 years of hard time, and the Russian asset with a bathroom full of classified documents gets to go back into the White House. Reality is on Max. Winner is on Hulu.
Is it a documentary?
No, the first there were documentaries, at least two, maybe more. The last two were scripted, and in this one that I recently watched, her mother is played by Connie Britton, who's lovely, and her dad, who's extremely quirky, is played by Zach Galifianakis.
Oh my gosh!
It's all very interesting to watch.
All right, let's introduce one of my favorite people.
Why
on the
people
planet.
do what they do and is fascinating. She was the youngest of the 7 brides for 7 brothers. She starred with Fred Astaire and Audrey Hepburn in Funny Face. She was Tyrone Power's secret love in Witness for the Prosecution and Frank Sinatra's leading lady in Sergeants 3. Her one-woman extravaganza, Consider Your Ass Kissed, will play the Palm Springs Purple Room on Saturday and Sunday, March 29th and 30th, and North Hollywood's El Portal Theater on May 30th. She is Ruta Lee. Welcome.
Wow, what a lovely introduction from a lovely lady. Thank you. And a handsome dude.
Well,
wow.
thank you. You are one of my favorite people. I've been with you on many occasions. When you've both performed and just been there socially. You are one of the most entertaining people I've ever been around. Funny, extemporaneously funny. I'm going to tell a story about you now.
Okay, please do.
I'm going to tell 2 stories about you, but the first one I'll pepper my show with stories about you. So you and I were both at the smokehouse at the celebration of their 80th or 100th birthday. It's the only place where they have waiters and waitresses that are as old as the restaurant, which is interesting.
Nice
But
touch.
anyway, they had this celebration, and part of the reception was in the bar area. I hope you remember this.
The very noisy bar
It was
area.
very noisy because it was one of the Dodger playoff games. But Ruta has a way of getting people to pay attention. So she stood in the middle of the room and yelled at the top of her lungs, "Shut the fuck up." And it was fantastic. Silence fell over the room, and she owned the room for the rest of the night.
I learned that in parochial school.
That was hysterical.
The nuns beat the hell out of me.
You are so entertaining, Ruta. So the one at the El Portal is going to be on your exact 90th birthday.
Yes.
Which is Friday, May 30th.
May
which is
30th.
unbelievable. And your show's going to include Ann Gillian, extremely talented lady, Joanne Worley, who's going to be on here in a couple of weeks, Bruce Valanche. Oh, my God. One of the funniest people ever. The sparkly and impeccable Fritz Coleman will be one of your guests
I
on
hear
there.
good things.
I mean, you are funny, so it's a combination of song and comedy and just Ruta being Ruta. I can't wait to see it.
Well,
tell us about the show.
You
What
know,
about
I
you?
have to tell you that I don't like birthdays for starters. And if anybody sings happy birthday, I can't believe that in this country that has the best songwriters in the world can't come up with a better song than
It's
that
not a
lousy
great
happy
song.
birthday.
It's not a
and
great
it's
song.
happy bar mitzvah to you, happy anniversary
But
to
you
you.
can just yell, "Shut the fuck up."
There you go.
Yeah.
But I don't like birthdays, and I thought the best way to face my birthday is to work through it.
There you go.
And so we made it a benefit for the Thalians, which
Okay.
of course you have performed for many times. And I'm so grateful that our group still exists because we were put together almost 70 years ago. And
1955 by actors that wanted to
Yes.
help people with mental health issues.
Yes.
Not necessarily in the entertainment world.
No.
It was just you helping other people. And
Right.
it's been, and you, are you still the CEO of that organization?
well, I am now the chairman of the board emeritus,
yes.
whatever the hell emeritus.
Well, as long as you're there, it's going to be a successful event.
But it's so good that we have been the Hollywood for mental health is what we basically were and are. And then somebody sort of apprised me of the fact that we were missing the boat on something, and that is that we were taking care of everybody from pediatric through geriatric care, but we never really concentrated on our returning veterans. Those beautiful young people that we send to every hellhole in the world that are willing to give up their lives for us and yet somehow sometimes fall through the cracks when it comes to mental health.
Absolutely.
And so we suddenly said, you know what? We've spent the last 40-something years trying to deal with children. We started out dealing with emotionally disturbed children and then went to geriatrics as well. And now we're concentrating on our veterans. And I'm very proud of the fact that we're still here doing this work. And Debbie Reynolds, of course, who was my best friend, now has gone to make our maker smile.
And the full circle moment is that you're performing on the Debbie Reynolds stage.
Yes.
At the El Portal Theater,
which is home away from home for you.
Yes, but her story in that theater is so interesting. She went as a child, like an 8 or 10-year-old child, rode her bike there to watch movies. And then she would go to warm up her Vegas act on that stage, so they named it the Debbie Reynolds stage. Now here's my second story about Debbie Reynolds. I opened for her in Orange County one time, the loveliest person ever. And my job was to open for her for a half hour, then come to the side of the stage and get an armful of roses and then give it to Debbie as I introduce her so she would have that. And I was a lot thinner then than I am now, which is hard to believe. So, and this is a true story. So, Miss Debbie Reynolds, and oh my God, one of the singing, and she comes out on the stage and she waits. Her timing was impeccable. She waits till there's complete silence in the room, and she puts her hand on the side of my cheek, and she said, "It was a wonderful job. Now go home and eat a fucking sandwich." The audience went nuts. It was she was a very amusing person. You two together must have been amazing.
She was naturally very, very funny.
Yeah.
And so I felt that she never really got the credit, the kudos for her acting abilities. She was a brilliant young actress as well.
She was funny on Will and Grace.
Oh, yes, of course.
That was a perfect
But she
role
was
for
a
her.
wonderful, serious actress, too, and
she was taken advantage of by husbands, and it really made her life miserable, right?
She was the first to say that she had the best taste in girlfriends, thank you very much, Debbie, but lousy taste in husbands.
Yeah.
Because 3 husbands, all of whom did her in one way or another.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, let's do. Oh, do you have more, Debbie?
No, just that this last husband, Mr. Hamlet, from what I gather, was a bit of a bad boy and was taken to task by the police and everybody in, where is he, in Virginia somewhere.
Oh, my goodness.
So...
You mean like he's behind the bars?
Well, I don't know how much time he's spending behind bars, but it sure looked that way.
Oh, man.
Oh, my goodness.
So
okay.
sad.
Well, we're going to go into a little bit. We want to learn what made you you. And according to your biography, which is titled "Consider Your Ass Kissed," and I'm considering mine kissed, and thank you. When you were 3 years old, your teacher, Mrs. Jackson, noticed something different about you, and your mom was not a showbiz mom, as you reinforced, but she was very interested in nurturing your interests.
My mom and dad were both born, raised, married in a tiny little village with dirt streets. No, they didn't ever see tarmac there, in Lithuania. And they wanted to come to America, where everybody knew that the streets were paved with gold, and but they couldn't get in. They couldn't get into the United States. The quotas were closed. And this, now we're talking, 2020, 21, 19.
Okay.
My father got a job with a Canadian firm to work the wheat fields of Saskatchewan.
Wow.
In Montreal, or based in Montreal, but they sent them out to Saskatchewan. And, of course, Canada was right next door to America, so that was the place to go. He worked for a year, saved his money, brought my mother over, and eventually I was born in Montreal, Canada. And both my parents had very heavy Lithuanian accents, and I was the only one. I spoke Lithuanian first at home, and then learned English playing in the street with the kids,
You didn't learn French?
A little bit, un petit peu.
Un petit peu. I'd like to hear a little bit of a Lithuanian accent.
Gerai, aš pakalbėsiu lietuviškai. Dabar labai malonu tave susitikti ir labai malonu pamatyti mano seną draugą.
It's very expressive. I love.
It's the oldest Indo-European language.
Wow.
Which is kind of interesting and something that I was not aware of. Mm-hmm. And I am a big star in Lithuania. I should just go there. The climate sucks, however.
Have they paved anything? Make sure they've paved something before you move.
Yes. Lithuania now is entirely different.
Oh, I know.
But let me tell you, I was there the first time when it was all under the communist boot.
Yeah.
All of Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Poland, they were all communist. Mm-hmm. And what a difference when I went back after young people put themselves in front of the tanks. And, so many people are willing to die for freedom, and we don't know how lucky we are in America
100%.
That we have it.
Do you still have relatives there?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Lots of relatives. And
is there like Ruta Lee Square?
No, but I should ask for it, shouldn't I? The president of Lithuania, who happened to have been raised in Chicago, believe it or not.
Okay.
Because they got out just before Lithuania went under the communist heel. And he went back and became president of Lithuania, had me in the White House there.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow.
And awarded me the most prestigious medals that are awarded to industrious people that are willing to blab about Lithuania. And, of course, I have talked about Lithuania ever since I can remember because, first of all, my name Ruta, which is a very popular Lithuanian name, is a very fragrant flowering herb that grows all over Lithuania, and brides wear garlands of it. It's talked about in every poem. It's sung in every song. It's embroidered into theater curtains, a sprig of Ruta. Isn't that nice?
That is.
I personally think its fragrance is a little bit like cat pee, but what the hell?
Well,
to each.
A lot of people like that. So was there a big Lithuanian population when your family moved there from Europe?
A small Lithuanian population, but in every place that Lithuanians wind up living, there is a church, and it is St. Casimir. And St. Casimir, of course, is the patron of Lithuania. And there's one here in Los Angeles. Wow. St.
So that
Casimir's.
becomes like a community center.
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so there was a Lithuanian church here in Hollywood that sort of welcomed your parents and showed them around.
How right you are.
When you were showing all this talent as a child.
My mother had always provided me with dance lessons. And my father used to say, "Oh, she don't like to practice. She don't like do homework. She don't do nothing. Nothing will happen." And my mother used to just say, "Look, my heart won't bleed that I didn't give her the opportunity," right? So she knew nothing about theater. And New York was right down the road from Montreal, which was a logical place for someone like me to go. She knew nothing about theater, but she saw movies.
Right.
And she saw Shirley Temple. And she said, "My daughter can do that."
Wow.
And as you said, Mrs. Jackson said, "Mary," to my mom, "your child is a little different." And I frankly think I came out of the womb singing and dancing and carrying on. So my mom, my dad wanted to go to Florida, get out of the snows of Montreal, the ice cold. He wanted to go to Florida. My mother knew that Hollywood, where there were palm trees, was a better place to go. And she would communicate with a wonderful priest that had started St. Casimir's here and would send him a few dollars every once in a while. And he invited them to come. And in 1947, they came to Los Angeles for the first time. And you can well imagine, and anybody that has grown up here, California in those days, nobody locked the car. Everybody had a convertible. The doors weren't locked. It was an entirely different bit of heaven than it is now, you know. And they fell so in love, and my mother said she cried on the train all the way back to Chicago because the tall palm trees were waving goodbye to her rather than hello.
Yeah, people that come from another country in less perfect circumstances in Europe appreciate our country more than those born and raised here.
I was the first to become a citizen when we moved to California, actually, but to the United States.
Oh, wow.
And my mother and father were still on Lithuanian quotas, which made it a little more difficult. And boy, it was difficult to become a citizen in those days. You had to learn about who the president of this committee was and what that committee did and who was on the team, you know. Unbelievable. And I think about my poor mother who didn't read English well and trying to study all of this. But they taught me also that this was God's gift to mankind, this wonderful country that we have, and that it must be appreciated and loved and worked for. And they did all of their lives. And Lord knows I've been doing it too.
Absolutely.
Well, I think one of the great testimonials that your career offers is that you diversified. I mean, you did game shows, you did live performance, and that fleshed you out as a three-dimensional performer. You were
Absolutely.
one of the great game show guests, and you ended up hosting one with Alex Trebek, God rest his soul,
Yes,
High Rollers.
God
I mean,
rest-
all that just kind of makes your career three-dimensional.
Well, you know, I have never in film been above the title. I've worked all along. I've always made a living, which is rather miraculous in our business. And you're right about diversifying, being able to do everything. And do you know that the most lucrative part of my career, the thing that made me the most money I ever made, was guesting once a month on Home Shopping Network.
Really?
Now, isn't that an interesting
What were
piece?
you selling?
Did you have a product to sell?
Spray vitamins.
Spray vitamins.
You just went and got them into your mouth, and the mucosa, the lining of your mouth, absorbed this in 30 seconds, whereas I found out from the people that washed out the Here's Johnnies and all of those things at all the ball games that what they found mostly was not diamond rings and bracelets and stuff in the garbage. What they found was unabsorbed vitamin pills.
Really?
Oh, that's so interesting.
You mean so that
Isn't
comes
that
out
interesting?
the other side of your
You
body?
got it.
Oh, so
It
you
passes
were
through.
able to look into the camera and say, "You guys,
Yes.
your body doesn't know how to metabolize that pill."
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Exactly right.
Joan Rivers said that too. She made more money. She was on QVC.
Yeah.
Or one of the other ones said she made more money doing that than she did performing.
Exactly. And it was wonderful. I'd go in once a month and I'd sell my own product, and then they liked what I did, so they'd say, so and so is missing, can you fill in on and sell
Sell these
shorts
mattresses.
or moccasins or like exactly.
That is fascinating.
I loved it.
So let's go back a little further.
Okay.
I love this story. I mean, I'm sure you've told this 100,000 times, but it's so good that you have to tell this. Your revenge on the Grauman's Chinese theater story, because it's a good
great
one.
story.
Well, this is honest to God truth. During the summer, I would want to make some extra money doing something or other, and so I would work as an usherette. Now, I don't know if your audience even knows what an usherette in a theater is anymore.
It's not like a raisinette. It's different.
But I stood in I got a job at Grauman's Chinese. Woo, woo, woo.
Oh, yeah.
And I stood in my little Chinese tunic and my black pants with a flashlight at the top of the aisle. And as people came in, I'd see them to a seat wherever there was a seat available, right?
And people were getting dressed up to go to the movies, right?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. It was just amazing.
Yeah.
Everything was neat and tidy. And I loved it because I could just stand there and watch the queens, Betty Grable and Ethel Merman Coleman and Mitzi Gaynor do their things, and I'd pray and say, oh, dear God, please let me do that. Let me do that, too. I want to do that.
And were you there for, they used to do all the major premieres.
Oh, yes.
Were you there for those nights? Those must have been unbelievable.
Some nights, yes, I did. But anyway, I did that, and I loved it. And then I got promoted to Candy Girl.
Yeah.
Now, I have to explain that math wasn't and never will be my long suit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you hold a wad of bills and ruffle them, I'll tell you how much is there. But add 2 and 2, I can't do it without a computer.
No.
And I explained, but this was okay because everything was 5 cents, 10 cents, 15 cents, 25 cents. And it was all numbers I could deal with. That was fine, and I could cut out and stand at the top of the aisle when nobody was buying anything and watch my queens do their thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then one night, the cashier got sick in the box office. And I said, I can't do this. And he said, no, it's very easy. All you do is push in $1.98 or $2.35.
Oh, that's hard.
And then punch in $5 or $10 or whatever you're given,
now you have to count
and
on your
it'll give you
fingers.
the right change.
No, you have to count on your fingers.
We were $40 short that night, and the guy thought I had taken it. And I sat there with big tears and said, I did not steal the money. I told you I was lousy at math, and I can't help it. It's not my fault. And so I got fired. And where did my star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame wind up? But right in front of the friggin' box office.
That's hysterical.
There we go.
That's such a great story.
Isn't that heaven?
It's indelible.
Now that's guardian angels
What was
working.
your first paying job in the entertainment business in Hollywood?
I'm not sure if it was Roy Rogers or if it was. It must have been Roy Rogers because they were all union shows.
On IMDb, it has Roy Rogers.
Roy Rogers. And then I frankly think IMDb is wrong. I think that Burns and Allen was my first show.
You were about 16 and you played Ronnie's girlfriend.
Yes.
So how did that go? How did George and Gracie treat you?
Like a little angel.
Oh.
They were just wonderful. In fact, what was really nice is that I would get invited to some of their very swazy Hollywood cocktail parties and stuff around the pool, you know.
Yeah.
And then it got to a point of where I joined the Thalians and whatnot. I would invite George, because Gracie was gone by then, to come and he would come and be my guest. And I thought, wow, is that marvelous or not? Oh.
So you have a lot of these full circle moments.
Yes.
That's nice.
Isn't our maker wonderful to kind of surprise you with little treats like that? And of course, when you're young and stupid like I was, you don't recognize how fortunate you are that this is happening to you. You think, oh, this is going to go on forever, you know.
I mean, you've hobnobbed with the biggest stars in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Funny Face with Fred Astaire. Talk about working with him.
I just wish I had been smart enough to flirt with him. He was a great friend and just darling, and he used to keep track of me. And he'd write me little notes saying, because I was doing a 2.5-hour live show every day with Regis Philbin.
Oh, my goodness.
And he'd say, I loved that interview, but the other one you could have done, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, my.
And did I keep those notes? Schmuckette here did not.
Really?
You know, you think, oh, well, that'll happen. He'll send me another one tomorrow. But his daughter and son-in-law became very good friends. And so I always had kind of a bit of a reach to.
And Audrey Hepburn was in that show, and just the angel of all angels, right?
She was the most divine person. And I have to share something with you. Mm-hmm. I asked Audrey, who was a little on the shy side. She was not gregarious and booming, outgoing like I am. And I asked her, I said, how do you stay that thin? And I'm sharing this with you and your audience.
Okay.
And that is, she said, well, during the war, of course, I was in Europe and food was a rare thing and you didn't get anything, so I stayed automatically thin. But now that I am in Hollywood and I can afford anything that I want, I order everything on the menu that I want and I take one bite of it.
Oh my God, that's discipline.
That was her secret.
Her thinness and her fashion sense became iconic.
Oh, absolutely.
She was dictating fashions.
Absolutely.
For that period of time,
Absolutely. Well, she was a real Givenchy fan.
Yeah.
That was her.
Now, did you do any dancing in Funny Face? Did you get to dance with Fred Astaire?
No, unfortunately. I did in the wings.
Right.
I did that sort of thing, but I didn't dance with Fred Astaire. But yes, I did dance a little.
Did he choreograph the dancing in his films?
And Hermes
No.
Pan.
I'll tell you who did. Hermes Pan.
Yeah.
Ah, there we go.
Now, maybe he said, well, I think this would be good here or that, whatever.
The flourishes.
But Hermes Pan got the credit for it all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I never worked for Hermes Pan, but I did watch him work, and I'd go over when I was doing Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, I'd go over and visit on other sets. And the interesting thing is, all the big money from Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer went into Brigadoon,
Really?
which was being made at the same time Seven Brides was being made.
With Gene Kelly, right?
Yeah. And Van Johnson
Right.
and Sid Charisse. And all the money went there. Seven Brides was like a little stepsister that was way down the line. And yet, look what happened.
Yeah. You guys were a hit.
Seven Brides is one of the 100 top pictures ever made.
Were you under contract to MGM at the
No,
moment?
I wish I had been. Well, for the movie, of course.
Yeah.
But and those were the days when we were doing Seven Brides, when we worked 6 days a week.
Well, you had 7 brides for 7 brothers, and according to my math, and I'm not any better than you are at it, but that's 14 people. How did everyone get along?
Beautifully. But I have to tell you, I was scared to death when I first went into the bar, Barre, the French ballet bar,
Yes.
that we would do every morning to warm up for the dance rehearsals, because we did dance rehearsals for 6 weeks to get us ready.
How old were you? You were 16.
I was 16, 17, right, just the very beginning of my career. And I would go into the bar and everybody, some of the best dancers in America were in that film. And I'd say, oh my God, what am I doing here? How did I ever get so lucky? And I think it was a Lithuanian polka that got me my job. I went in for the audition. My mother went across the street to the church that was across the street from casting. She got on her knees and prayed, lit candles. And I went out and didn't get on my knees, but put on my little dance tights and showed them what I could do ballet-wise, which wasn't very much. And then I did a little jazz, and the choreographer, Michael Kidd, said, Ruta, can you do a little something folksy? And I, folksy? Hell yeah, I can do a good Lithuanian polka. And I did, and I think it's what got me the job.
Wow.
But when I looked at all those great dancers that we had, whoa.
Did that movie change your life and get you cast in other things afterwards, quickly?
I don't know. Let me think now. The next movie I did...
That was your big introduction to the global stage.
But I have to remind you of one thing, too. My family name is Kilmonis. Lee is MGM's addition to my personality. They kicked around names, and I insisted on keeping Ruta. And they said, oh, you'll never become a movie star with a name like Ruta Kilmonis. No, we have to change your name. So I said, oh, okay, let's change my name. And so they kicked around a lot of names, and suddenly somebody, and nothing sounded right, but somebody said Ruta Lee. I said, Lee? The diminutive of Ruta in Lithuanian, in Yiddish, in German, in Polish, in anything is Rutele. Rutele, 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 Rutele.
Right.
So I said, Ruta Lee. Oh, okay, that works. That's how I became Ruta Lee.
I love it.
Okay, so now they've sent me out all over the United States and Canada promoting Seven Brides for Seven Brothers because it was a picture nobody ever heard of, so they were doing the PR stuff. And I mean, I'm nude naked in Colorado, leaning against a cactus, or I've got an umbrella in a rainstorm in Salt Lake City in a bathing suit, and anything that would make the front pages, or the second pages. And it's all Ruta Lee, Ruta Lee, Ruta Lee. Well, somebody forgot to tell the guy that did the credits in the film.
Uh-oh.
And the picture comes out as Ruth, mind you, Ruta Kilmonis.
Oh.
And so all those people in Ames, Iowa are saying, who the hell was that Ruta Lee girl that said she was in the movie?
Okay.
Wow.
But boy, did that stand me in good stead when it came to calling Khrushchev and going into Lithuania, into communist territory.
All right, so
My name was Ruta Kilmonis.
Oh, that's right. So you need to get your grandmother out of an internment camp in Siberia. Give us some backstory. How did she wind up there?
Like everybody else
just
when they
rounded
were
up.
repatriating all of those Baltic countries.
They didn't want Lithuanian people.
No,
they were
because
just
the
ethnic cleansing?
nationalism, would stay there, so they would pick up people. And my grandparents had a teeny, probably 1 acre farm in a little tiny town, where and maybe they were considered rich because they had a cow. That was about it.
But they took it.
And they took my grandparents, said, pack what you can carry and food that you can carry, and put them on a train for 6 weeks to Siberia. Now you tell me why. I tried to find out when I went there. Anyway, she spent 12 years in Siberia, finally was permitted to come back to to Lithuania. And I got word we were sending packages as best we could to Siberia, where you were allowed to send 40 pounds of something. Mm-hmm. So it would be, a pound of coffee, a pound of tea, a pound of sugar, a pound of lard, a pound of whatever to make it up. And it helped to sustain my grandmother, and then eventually she hitchhiked across Siberia to where she could find my aunts and other, family there. And off they went. They decided to go back to Lithuania, and we got word from somebody, because she never learned to read or write, so she was asking one of the cousins to write, saying that she had been told that she's going to die, that her heart wasn't good, and so she was saying, thank you for the clothes we sent, thank you for the things that we sent for her to be laid out in, because that was very important to the Lithuanian ladies, to all Europeans, to have the nice clothes to be laid out in, and a white apron and a scarf to put on her head. And
was she alive long enough to be aware of your fame in the United States?
She had no notion of that. She had some notion that I was doing something, but she really didn't. They didn't have television. Yeah. They didn't have anything like that.
She is your mother's mother?
My mother's mother.
Okay, go ahead.
So anyway, we get word that she's not good, and my mother is in a spate of tears. I came home from Warner Brothers that day, and we read the letter, and she could be dead for all I know, because it took like 6 weeks for a letter to get here and one to get there. And I went out with friends that night, and the more wine they poured, the more obvious it became that I needed to do something extraordinary. And the sillier I got, the more I thought about, okay, when the time is right, I'll just go ahead and place a call to Khrushchev.
Wow.
What the hell have I got to lose? And remember, children, in those days we had person-to-person calls. You paid twice as much for it, but you didn't pay for it if you didn't get your person.
Right.
So I say to the operator, I want to call at like 2 or 3 in the morning, so
Is
that
Nikita
would
in?
work out with the time in Moscow. And I said, I want to talk to Nikita Khrushchev, the Kremlin, Moscow, USSR. And the bitch said, how do you spell Khrushchev? Well, how the hell do I know?
It's transliteration anyway.
Exactly.
But it worked. Huh.
It worked. It took back and
Wow.
forth many, many times, and I started calling the Russian embassy in Washington. And I spoke to everybody from the window washer to the gardener to the third maid from the left. And yet, no. And finally, the operator in Moscow said, Mr. Khrushchev, no speak it English. You speak it with interpreter. And I remembered this handsome young man that traveled with him when he was banging his shoe on the desk and making what he was saying. And my father used to laugh because he was fluent in Russian. He'd translate it so it was palatable for our Victorian American ears, you know. And there I said, yes, I'll speak to him. And he said, Miss Lee, we see your movies here all the time. It would be a pleasure to meet you. What can I do for you? And I said,
Okay.
I want to come to Lithuania. Nobody could go to Lithuania. You had to be a very high communist official to go to any of those satellite countries.
Right.
I said, I want to go to Lithuania, and what's more, and I had been warned not to take my parents, I want to bring my mother and father, who have not seen Lithuania since they left 35 years ago. And he said, oh, well,
One moment, please.
one moment, please. Exactly. He said, present yourself again. He said, first of all, he said, talk to your congressman about it. And I said, what in the hell does my congressman have to do with my traveling in your country? Mm-hmm. This isn't a matter of politics. This is a matter of the heart. I don't even know if my grandmother is alive or dead now. But if she's dead, I'll go to her gravesite. If she's alive, I'll see her. Mm-hmm. He said, present yourself again to the Russian embassy. And I thought, oh, Jesus, I've talked to them 5 times already, you know. But this time, in 30 minutes when I called, I was immediately connected to the first secretary, who just happened to be Lithuanian.
Really?
And who later became president of Lithuania.
Wow.
That is.
And so, long story short, within 48 hours, my mother and father and I were on Pan American Airlines. God, that was a great airline. Heading off to Moscow first, and then on a plane to Lithuania.
Oh, my gosh.
And
When you got to see your grandmother, how long had she been out of the gulag at that point?
probably a year.
Wow.
And when we got to the hospital, and the staff was wonderful. The doctors all gathered and the nurses all gathered. Great hospital. They didn't even have aspirin. That's how great the communist system was.
Oh, my goodness.
But they all gathered and everybody was in a spate of tears.
Did your grandmother know you were coming?
No, nobody knew. Nobody knew we were
That's
coming.
huge.
Nobody.
And was she really in bad health at that point, where it was like a last visitation type thing?
She lived for 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days.
But you brought her back here.
I brought her back here. I didn't bring her that trip.
Okay.
Because she wasn't well enough, they said. But I went back. This was February, and I went back in July to get her. Oh. And that was a scary adventure because I was all by myself.
Oh.
And having to go through, and the whole communist system left everybody very rude and very suspicious and not nice, you know.
I mean,
not
people
warm
were
and
taught to
welcoming.
rat each other out.
Exactly.
What a gift you gave your grandmother, though.
Oh, yes.
And the closing chapters of her life to bring her over.
Isn't
here.
that something?
Oh,
So
man.
I got her on the plane, and we checked into the best hotel in Moscow on the way back. I couldn't go from Lithuania. I had to go to Moscow, and British Air, God bless them, flew once a week So we had to get everything done in the few days that I had in Moscow. And nobody was helpful. You know, I always feel like with Americans, if it isn't in this office, now wait a minute, let me call and see if they can take you down in the next office, or go 2 doors down. Not there. Nyet. Forget it. You know, that was it. To try to make a phone call in a public phone booth, who knew what kind of money to put in and what to do, you know, with the Russian
Especially
rubles.
you with the math.
on the other end of the phone when you're talking.
But I would seat my grandmother in the hotel and say, don't you move, don't go anywhere, don't do anything. I'll be back as soon as I can, you know. And I took her to the American embassy where she had cream of mushroom soup, Campbell's cream of mushroom soup, and she thought she'd died and gone to heaven, you know. But I finally got the papers all signed, and we made it in time, and we got on a plane, and we're seated, and BOAC moved us up into first class, and I'm so grateful. And we're sitting there, and the girls are running up and down the aisle, and running around with trays of champagne and whatever. And my grandmother grabs me and she says, "Don't take anything because I don't have any money. I don't." And I said, "No, Grandma. It's all taken care of. Whatever you want, you know, you can have. What would you like?" And she said, "Well, I've heard about it all my life, but I've never had it. I want cognac." Cognac. Now we're talking about a 92-year-old lady, right? 95 years old, whatever. And I mean, she was itty-bitty and tiny and
I see
wizened.
where you got your guts from. Your chutzpah.
Grandma's ready to get lit.
Yeah.
So my grandmother, I figure she's going to sip that all the way to London. She goes, I swear the woman had 6 of them before we got off the plane.
She deserved it.
She was just incredible.
Wow.
So did you spoke Lithuanian with
Yes.
your and you were able to speak that from your parent,
Yes,
learning that, absorbing
yes.
that?
And the interesting thing is that the Lithuanian that I speak is very country. Mm-hmm. It would be hillbilly.
Sure.
Compared to the educated Lithuanian.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about stepping off the airline back in this country and her first reaction to Southern California.
Oh, my God. Well, the first time we got off the plane was in London, and it was the press from all over the world was there.
Really?
And in the morning when they brought us tea in our room, she looked at all the newspapers because we were in every newspaper, and she'd say, and I'd say, "Why are you doing that?" She said, "In this one, I'm smiling, and you can see I don't have teeth."
Oh, honey.
So I know where my showbiz came from.
Yeah.
Wow.
But when she got off the plane here, this brings tears to my eyes every time I think about it. We didn't have jetways then. Mm-hmm. She stepped off the plane, dropped to her knees, kissed the ground, and said, "Hello, America."
Yep.
Anyway,
God bless you.
Well, God bless her. And
You did.
that she got to spend.
What a gift. What a gift.
And you know the sad part of all of this is she died, I think probably from a lot of emotional stress, the day that my aunt that I had gotten out of Siberia as well arrived in the United States.
And that was her daughter as well.
And that was her daughter was
and
arriving.
How long
and
was
she
that
dropped.
after you had brought your grandmother?
2 years, 2 months, and 2 days. And I have a bone to pick with God because after
Please
all
don't do
that
it in this
trouble,
room.
after all that trouble of getting her here, you know, I wanted her to last a little longer.
I think
But-
it was knowing that her daughter was going to be okay.
Yes,
let
maybe.
Let her go.
Man, you just you tied the ribbon on your family. It was what a beautiful, beautiful gesture on both of their parts from you.
But how beautiful that the communist system bent a little bit
For humanity.
to allow me to get there. And of course, thank God for the American and the world press who followed this. I didn't even know because I was on a plane going.
Yeah, they saw a great promotional
Yeah, the
opportunity.
Of
optics
course,
were
they
beautiful.
saw the world press watching, and here comes this American starlet, you know, who doesn't know shit from Shinola, but you know, manages to get something done. So I am so grateful to our press and the world press for following it like the perils of Pauline.
Well, you were ready to put a face on it, and maybe that helped bring down the Iron Curtain ultimately.
I don't know that I was ready. I don't know that I was prepared. It just sort of happened.
No,
so
it
that's
happened.
the right hand of God on my shoulder saying, march forward.
Exactly. But you were ready to step up to the cause that was presenting itself.
Oh,
that you
yeah.
knew you were capable. You knew you were capable of.
I was amazed, frankly, that they let me in because I had done so many broadcasts for Voice of America
Right.
condemning the communist system and what it had done to Romania and Poland and Czechoslovakia and Lithuania. And
Yeah. Well, we're going to turn a corner because we have a game to play. I hope you're ready to play a game.
Oh, sure.
Okay. This
You've had
game,
an amazing career in life.
yeah, and this
You
game
really have.
celebrates your career. So the game is called IMDb Roulette. Ruta Lee, you have 161 IMDb credits. Here's how we play. I say one of your credits, and you tell us, if you can, who you played and what you remember about being on the set.
Okay.
Okay, Ruta Lee, do you remember being on The Roy Rogers Show, which would have been the dream of any American child?
That's what I would think, and I don't remember it. I do remember Roy, and I do remember that lovely Dale, but I don't remember doing the show, and that's why I'm wondering if IMDb is wrong. I sure do remember the Burns and Allen show.
All right.
Yeah,
well,
okay, let me see how good you are now.
Okay.
You were on there twice.
I don't doubt it.
What was your name on either or both of those times? You remember?
Girl.
It was girl number one. You were Penny Miller on the first one.
Oh, yeah?
And Sandy Cummings.
Oh,
on the second
Sandy. I should have remembered that because that was their daughter's
one.
name.
That's cruel and unusual punishment.
that's-
well, what do you remember about being on that show? I watched a clip, and I could not figure out the plot line because there were many parents and there was confusion, and George looks right into the camera, and he had that break the fourth wall sort of like cuteness where he would look at the camera and be like, can you believe? But do you remember the plot line? There was some misunderstanding about who Ronnie's parents were.
Yes, that I wanted them to meet my family.
Right.
I vaguely remember. And of course, she was so deliciously dipsy-doodle that you never knew what was going to come out of her. And it was so well written and so well played. Oh,
I don't know.
Gracie was divine.
I don't know how they wrote for Gracie because it was just, she would take everything very literally, but then with a twinkle.
Yes.
So it was so delightful to watch.
And he was the first person to do the breaking the fourth wall thing where he looked at the camera and had an aside.
I'm so glad you remembered that because I did not remember that he was the first.
And he had his little asides were, I always thought, the best part of the show.
The reason that I got that was that I was working in a little theater in Hollywood that was the sister to the Players Ring, and it was called the Gallery Stage. And down on Crescent Heights Boulevard at Santa Monica, there used to be an island, and in that island was our theater. And the producer on the musical, On the Town, I think it was that I was doing. Oh, this is funny. I have a funny story. End of the first act is the big Times Square ballet. And there I am, and I'm playing a posh girl, with the black tight skirt with the slit and the black mesh hose and the black beret and a black sweater. And, of course, if there's one thing that I'm short of, it's boobs. I just don't have them. That's all there is to it. And so naturally I had a very well-padded bra. Sure. And in the process of dancing and doing and all of that, the bra strapless had switched, and now I had one breast coming out here and one breast coming out here.
A little
and
rearrangement.
ta-da for the end. And the audience is looking at this.
Applauding for the breasts.
Just
or
a
for you?
malfunction. That's all.
Wow.
I'm gonna add one on the fly because
Okay.
we've talked about Funny Face, and I want to talk about Lucy.
Oh,
You and Milton Berle and Lucy. I want to hear about
Wow.
that day.
she is one of my favorite people that God put on this earth. I loved her. It was a great day. If anybody knew Lucy, they knew that she brooked no foolishness when you were working. she liked people that knew their lines and all of that stuff. And, of course, it was a 4-camera show, which meant that when the moves were choreographed, it was almost like a ballet. You really had to hit your marks the right way. Otherwise, your nose could be in the other person's close-up, in the 4-camera system. And I was good at dance and choreography, so that was fine with me. And she liked me. We really got along very well. And she became a very good friend. And God bless her, when I asked her to do the Thalians as our honoree, she did. I asked her to chair the Founders for Diabetic Research for the City of Hope. She did that. Whatever I asked her, she would do. And I'm so grateful. And I'm still very friendly with her daughter, who lives in Palm Springs now.
Oh, I love her. All right, so there, in the script, Lucy thinks that you and Milton Berle are having an affair, and she's mixing up a Caesar salad that finds its way onto Milton's head. You were caught in the crossfire. Do you remember any of this?
I remember all of it. I remember when she dumps the Thousand Island dressed salad on his head, and he's wearing glasses, and he put up his fingers and wiped the glasses. It was so funny that I literally peed my pants laughing.
It looks like you are having a very difficult time
It was
holding.
very difficult. It was very difficult. But, oh, my God, what fun. What absolute fun. And Milton, was not the easiest man in the world to work with, but we got along so well. And he also became a good friend and would do whatever I asked him to do.
He respected you.
Oh, God. It is so nice that I was able not just to work with people, to kind of make friends of them and then call on them for the Thalians.
Yeah, absolutely. Do good work. You're next, Fritz.
Okay, at the time, Gunsmoke, first of all, was the longest lasting show on television, but it was also the most iconic, and it was appointment television, and you played on that show. Do you remember the name of the young woman you played on that show?
No. I did the show several times.
Oh, you did? How about the time you were Jenny?
Jenny sounds wonderful. Thank you. There's a wonderful story that goes with this.
We want to hear that.
All right. So Jim, of course, is a fabulous, monstrously big guy, And I'm playing this little tart that tries to lure him into my bed and my bedroom.
Oh, my goodness.
And there wasn't a door on my bedroom. There was a drape, a heavy velveteen drape on, round doodahs. And
it was a classy joint.
Yes, and it's in the saloon down the hall from where
Kitty or whoever,
Miss
whatever.
Kitty is.
Yeah.
And he's in my door, and I'm trying to utz him in there. And he comes in, and he takes a quilt, throws it over my head, picks me up, and throws me over his shoulder to take me down to Miss Kitty's room.
Okay.
In the process of trying to get through the door, he takes the drape and pulls it this way, thereby moving his body, and my head hits the door frame, and I go out like a light.
Wow.
No.
Knocks me clear out. Whap.
Whoa.
And I drop to the floor, and I come to, lying on the floor, looking up into Jim's face, and big tears are pouring down his face.
He's so glad
And
you're
he's saying,
alive.
"Oh, my God, I didn't kill you. Oh, my God. Oh, my God." And what a sweet moment it was. What a totally delicious, sweet moment. And I keep saying, if my brain is a little rattled to this day, I blame it on him.
Jim Arness.
Wow.
Yes.
Wonderful Jim Arness.
He clocked you.
And his brother looked so much like you and like Webb.
Peter Graves.
Peter Graves. Stop and think about that.
Yeah.
Handsome Peter Graves.
Oh, yes. So handsome. All right. I know you remember this one because I think it's iconic, The Twilight Zone.
Oh, boy. She
But
was
especially your episode.
I love that episode.
Talk
It was
about it.
one of my favorite things. She was another tart. The tarts are always much more fun to play
they're
than
fun.
the goody two-shoes,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
Flora Gordon.
Flora,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, I remember her.
So what was up with her? What was her deal?
She was a gold digger,
Ah.
and she married a much older man because she wanted the money, and she was very rough with him and teased him about how old he was and how falling apart he was.
Oh.
And of course, his brother was a scientist who had come up with some sort of a potion that had not really been tried yet on humans, and that it regressed age, you know. And oh God, what a lovely show it was. I got to be a real tart. I loved
Yes.
her. I just loved her.
But did you learn your lesson?
No.
Hell no. I'm still learning.
All right, the Andy Griffith Show. You were on there a couple of times.
Yeah.
Do you remember the names of your characters on there? No, I don't want to do that to you. That's cruel.
Once I was Marilyn movie star. What the hell was her name?
Darlene Mason?
Oh, Darlene Mason was the movie star.
Mm-hmm.
But the other one,
Gene Boswell.
oh my goodness. How fun to recall these with you. Thank
Good.
you.
But we want to hear about that show because there were so many wonderful performers. Andy Griffith, you had Don Knotts, you had Ronnie Howard. So what do you remember about being on that set?
What I remember is that I should have been much nicer to Ronnie Howard. But who cared, little twerp? Now the major producer of the world,
Yep.
and so good at what he does.
Yeah.
And, just think, maybe I could have been anti-Ruta and done some films for him. It was such a fun set to be on because Andy had the wildest sense of humor. And
Oh, really? Tell us about that.
he had a great sense of humor, and there was always music. The minute the cameras weren't rolling, the banjo or whatever came out, and there was kind of music all the time. And
You know, he was a great actor.
oh, very good.
A Face in the Crowd, one of my favorite movies of all time.
Me too.
He's such a great actor.
Me too. I just adored him and loved working with him.
So,
Absolutely
Ruta,
loved it.
before we have to wrap up here, we want to talk about your show, singing and comedy and dancing and just being Ruta. So, what's the songbook of your show?
all familiar songs. I find that when I'm an audience and I go in and I'm hearing songs from maybe current shows on Broadway, but I've never heard them before. What I loved about the olden days was that usually before you went to see a show, whether it was in New York or whether it was here or Chicago, you heard the album, the cast album,
Right.
and you knew
Yeah. By the
The
time you
familiarity made the audience like it
oh,
even
and
more.
how.
Yeah.
And nowadays, you don't know any of the music. So I only like to do songs that people have heard before, and certainly that I've heard before.
Do you have an orchestra or a group on stage with you? A pianist?
Can't afford pianist, bass, and of course drums,
Fantastic.
and
so
maybe
you'll
maybe
be
one
Ruta, and it's your birthday, May 30th. It's 8 o'clock at the El Portal Theater. Go to elportaltheater.com. Theater is spelled the formal way, only the best for Ruta.
With an E at the end.
You're right, right. But anyway, I mean, Ann Gillian, who's so talented,
Oh, she's
and
so
Bruce
good.
Valanche, who will blow the roof off the place, and we're just going to have a great time.
We will, and of course
I'll
the
be there.
fabulous Mr. Coleman.
I'll be there, and Joanne Worley, and it's going to be a great night.
Isn't it fun that I could call on people and say, "Come spend, part of my birthday with me"?
Well,
I
I'll
can't
tell you,
stand
you
the
know
thought.
so many people in this business. When I went to Roberta Kent's birthday
Oh,
party, there was
God.
like a reception line at your table, and people just want to come up and pay tribute to you. And
Just such fun to visit
but
with
you
everybody.
are truly one of the most entertaining people. I just love to watch you. You command a room. You have that big voice, and you don't take crap from anybody, and you just run the room, and I just love it.
I'm so grateful to have you in my life, Mr. Fritz
bless your
Coleman.
heart.
I just sort of have been such a fan of yours from
Well,
the
you've
good
been there,
old
you come to
days.
my
Right,
shows, even when you
yeah.
had to pay, which is unbelievable.
That's the good part.
Well, I wish you luck at this show in Palm
Thank you, and
Springs.
thank you for being part of it when it's here at the El Portal.
All right, my darling.
Thank you, and God bless you both.
God bless you. You've
was a
been
great
And,
conversation.
and as I want to say, consider your asses kissed.
Ruta, do you want to say hi to our next guest, Rick Mitchell? He's a comedian who's written a book.
He has a twinkle in his
He's
eye.
adorable.
I bet he's
isn't
wicked.
he?
I think
if you pick up the headphones, you'll...
I think your presence has accelerated his blood pressure.
God bless you.
That's exactly it.
Thanks for coming along down the media path, and however you have found your way to us, we would love for you to like and subscribe and give us a nice review because as creators, it is our appointed duty to ask you to do that. You may also want to find us on Instagram and Blue Sky where we are at Media Path Pod, and on Facebook where our show page is Media Path Podcast and our Facebook group is Media Path with Fritz and Wheezy Podcast Community. If you are listening to our show, we are also a video podcast on YouTube at Media Path Podcast. You can write to us at mediapathpodcast@gmail.com. My TikTok is Louise Palenker, where I post behind-the-scenes peeks and clips from the show. And Fritz's TikTok is Fritz Coleman Comedy. He posts stand-up clips and popular dance crazes. Our website is mediapathpodcast.com. There you can binge episodes and our spicy newsletter. Thank you so much. On with the rest of the show. Rick Mitchell and Carol Leifer have written a book that may help you get some sleep between now and your daughter's wedding. It's called How to Write a Funny Speech. Welcome, Rick.
Hello.
Now, I would imagine...
Hey, guys.
Now, you left out the best part of the title. For a wedding, a bar mitzvah, a graduation, or any other event you didn't want to go to in the first place. That's the subtitle.
Right.
That's the subtitle.
That's
now,
right.
I would imagine that giving a book that title places a little bit of pressure on an author to write a funny book, like the windows at the window store. So
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. When you write a book like this, my problem is sometimes you read a book on how to be funny or something like that, and it's not funny. And so Carol and I have really made a point to make it a fun read and funny as well.
It really is.
It really is laugh out loud funny.
I
It's-
look at toward the,
great.
I'm going to go over some of my favorite lines, but you look toward the end of the chapter when you've sort of all your information has
Summarized.
been metastasized and summarized, and it's fun. So you not only co-wrote it with one of the funniest people, Carol Leifer, but also you have a foreword by Carol Burnett.
Yes, everyone in this book is named Carol except
So
me.
what, Carol King wasn't available? I mean, try.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's great. I mean, Carol Leifer, for those people who may not know, is comedy legend in her own right, and she just won the Emmy for Hacks, writing on Hacks, and she wrote for Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm, and
Just
she
wrote
also
on the
worked with
Oscars
Carol
last
Burnett.
weekend.
Yeah. And so she also worked with Carol Burnett and was so nice enough to do the foreword for us. And not only that, Carol sent Carol Burnett the book and said, hey, I'd love if you do the foreword, but no pressure if you want to read it. And she read it that night.
Did she?
And then got back to her the next day and said, I love it. And also pointed out stuff she liked on certain pages. And then said, I'll absolutely write the foreword. So that was so nice of
That's
her.
so cute. I love Carol Burnett. And I've always loved Carol Leifer. Like when I was a teenager, my sisters and I would quote some of her lines from her stand, because we came out to Hollywood and we went to the Improv. We saw Carol Leifer, and then we spent the rest of our childhood quoting her. So for me,
Yes.
she's just
She and I were just talking about this because she had, a great line that she did on Carson. She said it was like Carson's favorite joke, and the line was, "I don't have any children, at least none that I know of." And we were talking about it because we've both seen so many people do that joke
My
since
God,
then.
that's like an iconic.
I mean, but she was the one who did it. She came up with that joke, and it's such a killer joke. Like so many people think it's like a stock joke now.
I worked
Like,
with
they
her
just
2
thought-
weeks ago. She came and did a guest set on a show I was doing at the El Portal Theater. She did the funniest joke I've heard in a long time. She goes, I'm gay and I'm married to another woman. And she said, I'll tell you why I turned gay, because I was older, I was divorced, I had no children. I thought, what one thing can I do that will really piss my parents off? Tell them I'm gay. The audience
Right.
went nuts. She's so funny.
Yeah.
All right, you have some great tips about speech writing here. I'm going to go through some that I found interesting, and you'll expound on them.
Sure.
Keep them short and sweet. 5 minutes. I've never heard a speech go 5 minutes, but people should learn from that suggestion.
God, they should. I mean, we've all been to these events where they just ramble on and on. I don't know what it is. I think that people think that when they're talking about someone they know, they need to fit in everything they know about the person and every story. And you don't. It's like no more than 5 minutes. Nobody's going to be mad at that. No one complains when nobody goes, it's too short. That was too short. But all you see are speeches that ramble on and on. So we say 5 minutes at the most. And I think you'll find you're able to get across a lot in that time.
And it's really good advice too, because I mean, I am a comedy writer and from the world of radio, but I had coworkers come into my office and say, you got to help me. I have to give a speech at my brother's wedding. Okay, Matt, when's your brother's wedding? In 9 months. And he was literally panicking already. Yeah. That's how terrified most people are about it. So I think this book is like, people are going to really keep it on the bedside table and read from it every night because they just need to be calmed down. Like, I can do this. And anecdotally, the fear of public speaking plus the booze available at the event leads to a level of inebriation that is a known destroyer of speeches and dignity. So do you give advice about how much alcohol should be consumed in order to preserve your ability to pull off what you've been planning?
Well, let me tell you this. This story is actually how I met my wife. I was at a birthday party for a friend at a hotel bar, and I saw a beautiful woman in a green bridesmaid dress there, which was very out of place. And I go over and talk to her, and it turned out she was in a wedding in the banquet hall next door, and the open bar was very open. And she, all of a sudden, one of the best men got up there and was like, let the affairs begin. And it got really awkward. And she's like, I got to step out for a minute. And whereas I'm happy that I met her, this does more harm than good. And so part of what we say is have to keep it classy. And part of that is, we say, ideally, no drinking before the speech. Mm-hmm. You want to have one drink and yourself. That's fine. But as you know, Fritz, with stand-up too, that can lead to some problems if you drink too much before you're on stage. So
it'd be a whole different presentation if I were drinking before.
Exactly.
But you bring up another one of your good tips. Keep it classy. No F-bombs. I know you can hear it on TV and in movies. No, don't do that. It's so interesting how in the privacy of their own home, people can hear Dave Chappelle swear all night long. But when they're with their friends in a live environment, the reaction is not what you expect it to be. Keep it classy.
It's not. And part of it is, look, a lot of these events, there's all kinds of family there. You have grandma there, you have your aunt there, you have kids there. And even if people are okay with it, they're not going to be okay with you saying that because they know these other people are probably not okay with it. So it just makes the whole thing uncomfortable. So don't do it. Don't use the F word. Don't do weird things with the mic stand. Just stop. You don't need it, And
as much as you may know about their previous love life, there's no reason to share that.
Just don't. I mean, look, there's always exceptions to the rule. If you're at a bachelor party and it's some guy, you know they're okay with it. Okay, use your discretion, but no good comes from that ever. I mean, it's just the bride doesn't want to hear about that. The groom doesn't want to hear about that. I mean, people forget that this is their day, and so this is an event you need to keep that in mind. This is their special day, so make sure it stays that way.
And something you don't have to tell people is if you're not an amusing human being, don't sit down to write a funny speech. But there's some great tips that you may overlook in writing a speech just for everybody. And one is, don't talk about yourself. Talk about your relationship with the person you're there to honor. What is your connection to the person?
Absolutely. And this is a big mistake people make too, is that they get up there and they just start giving a speech and everybody there's going, who is this person? And I think you'll find if you say what your connection is, you're going to be able to, this joke's going to hit better because you've known that person for 13 years. So they don't mind you making fun of them. They know you have that connection. So it's important, like, say who you are. People need to know that not everybody there knows everyone. So you need to say that up front.
Yeah.
Very important.
Say who you are. One of the tips that you give too that I think is super important, I think especially for boomers, if you're giving a speech at your granddaughter's, bat mitzvah, is that this is going online. If you blow this, the more viral it's going. So be prepared and don't drink, because even if it's boring, at least you'll sit down with your ability to sleep, for the next year. You don't want to be haunted by what you've said.
Absolutely. And this day and age, everything lives forever online. So just be organized and.
But what do you think the biggest
prepared.
mistake is, Rick, that people make in speech writing?
In the writing itself, I think, what we talked about, right? I mean, too long is the biggest one. Like we said, too inappropriate. You touched on it too. I mean, like, if you're not funny, well, then maybe you don't want to try to be the funniest person. I think also when people do a funny speech, they're afraid to get a little emotional at the end or say something nice, but that's part of it. And you should do that. You should take a moment to appreciate these people in a serious way, because who's not going to like that,
So I have an anecdote. I was at the wedding of Don Rickles' daughter.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. Of course, Ed Mann was my partner and one of my very dear friends. Of course, I'm there to celebrate his wedding. We're sitting there and it's like 11 o'clock. It's midnight, like no speeches from Dad. So, but what happened was this, and I think it's really lovely, was that when Don and Bob finally gave their speeches, what Don Rickles said and it was like midnight 30. I mean, it was like everybody was there, Steve and Edie, Larry King, everybody, they were all there. So we're all waiting for Don Rickles. But when Don Rickles finally took the floor to give his speech, he said, "My wife reminded me daily, this is Mindy's day. This isn't about me." So, for him, he waited an appropriate amount of time for it to be her wedding, and then he did his speech, and of course, it was killer. But every event is different, and you stress this in your book, like, read the room, what's going on, where are you, what's the location, what's the time in history, what would be the right way. Just like when comedians walk into a club, they look around, who's here? Is this an 8th grade field trip, or is this a bachelorette party? What are the circumstances?
Absolutely. And as much information you can find out beforehand is helpful. And look, even, we have a speech in there of Carol at a retirement, at a funeral or a celebration of life. And she does, drop a swear word. And it got a hysterical laugh. Now, she's been doing comedy forever, so she knows how to read a room. But that's a good example of, like, okay, maybe these people really well. Maybe that's going to be okay to do something like that. But it's about reading the room, who these people are, where you are, what the setup is. Just like when you're doing a show at a comedy club, what comedians do, like you say, they find out, where's this going to be? Where's the mic? What kind of mic is it? Where, what's the lighting? Where's the light? So as much as you can find out, that's going to help you, and it'll make you feel better that you know what you're getting into as well.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite things about your book is your examples of what not to say in a certain circumstance. For instance, if it's the person's 3rd or 4th wedding, you don't say, and the wedding planner asks, "The usual?" And or you don't say, "At this point, she may as well catch her own bouquet."
Oh my God.
And my favorite one of this group is, you know what they say, never a bridesmaid, always a bride.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Those are so fun. I mean, they're just sort of like almost top 10 type lists. And it was just so fun to put those in there.
All right.
And the other thing we did in there too was look, some people get lazy, or maybe they don't have 9 months. Because this does take a little time, writing jokes, being funny, does take time, as you two know. And so we have these templates in there that we put in there that are kind of like Mad Libs. And so you can take the stories and sort of that you have and put it in, and that'll help you too. So
let's choose your own adventure. That is really helpful. Now you have You also have bonus content that includes Carmela's retirement toast to Tony Soprano and Homer Simpson's speech at Bart's graduation. What did these celebrated speakers get right?
Well, and we did try to apply. We thought it would be fun. Like, let's see how these characters would give speeches. And we tried to apply everything that we had there. And so keeping it classy, keeping it short, saying who you are up front, what your relationship is. And yeah, that is an example. And so it's a fun way to do that of here's how these people might give a speech. That was really fun. I could do a whole book on those, I think, actually. That would be fun.
All right, things not to say at a funeral. All right, who's ready to put the fun in funeral? Here's one. Don't say this at a funeral. I mean, he was in his 80s. I love that one.
Oh, God.
And here's one. Her hair and makeup didn't look that good when she was alive. Oh, God. And now here's the thing I was thinking. These are firmly implanted in my consciousness now. It's going to be hard not to say one of these inappropriate lines when you get into these circumstances.
You got to be careful with that, but you'll handle it. Right?
Have you given a speech at an event since you started this book?
I did do one kind of when we were writing it. Yeah, I had it at an event where I did one, and I got to tell you, they're like one of my favorite things to do are speeches at these events because, as a comedian, you go into a comedy club and there's an expectation, right? You have to be funny. The bar is so low at these events for speeches because so many of them are so bad. So you're at a strict advantage right away if you can have some things that are funny. People are going to love it. They
are
crazy.
So happy you're amusing. I know it.
I'm so happy because there's like speaker after speaker sometimes with these things, and it's just like people are just so exhausted. So the first time I ever did a wedding, I didn't know how it would go, and I tried writing some joke, and then I went up there, and it was, they like lost their minds. And I was like, wow, if only all the comedy clubs felt
Since
like
you've written this book, have you been invited to write specific speeches for specific events for anybody? Seems like they could pay you an enormous amount of money and you could write
the book. I hope so. The book just came out, so we'll see on that. But I have written speeches for people before, and there was a couple kind of recently who was giving a speech at their son's wedding, and they'd written something, and they'd be like, "How do we do that? Can we fix this?" And they had some good stuff, but I went in and punched it up and it went great for them. Yeah, so if you know what you're doing, it's really not that hard,
I have to give props to Ed Mann's father, who had to follow Don Rickles and Bob Newhart. He killed it. So that guy,
really?
Yeah, he probably was as scared as anybody has ever been giving a speech at a wedding.
Oh my God! But But then you can also say like, Rickles and Bob Newhart opened for me. So that's nice.
I think he may have spent the rest of his life saying that.
All right. How to write a funny speech for a wedding, a bar mitzvah, a graduation, and any other event you didn't want to go to in the first place. It's really an entertaining book, Rick. Even if you don't have to write a speech, you'll get many laughs out of it.
Absolutely. And it makes a great gift, too. It's an easy read.
It does. Thank you so much for joining us. All right,
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I'm going to read our closing credits. And this is not my best speech, but here I go. We want to thank our guests, Ruta Lee and Rick Mitchell. Our team includes producer Dina Friedman, John Maddox, Bill Filipiak, Mason Brown, Raf Rusak, Jordan Reyes, Haley Freight, and you. Our theme music is by me and John Maddox. I am Louise Palenker here with Fritz Coleman. Be well and wise. Take care of each other, and we will see you along the media path.
Nicely done, Rick. Good piece of work.
Rick. Thanks so much.
Is it out yet?
Yeah, it's out.
It is out, yes. It is out. Came out today. Actually.
Oh, my God.